Today we're talking about buying your first short-term rental. I am Erin Kavanaugh. I am the host with the most in reference to short-term rentals in the Shenandoah Valley. And I have my partner in crime, Vernon Coram from the Smokies. So, Vernon, why don't you step in, give us a little invite as to who you are and how you operate?
Yeah, my name again is Vernon Coram. I'm the founder of staycating.com, and I'm a real estate agent on the Casa Group team, the same team that Erin's on. We are in the Smokies, and we do tons and tons of short-term rental things for folks. We really try to help people that first and foremost are struggling. That's our bread and butter. We start with those kind of folks first, but our market right now is maturing a little bit, and it's an operator's market. So these kind of events like this are good for us to have to kind of help folks understand a little bit more about the term rental strategy from the ground up. And I appreciate you having me, Aaron. It's always good to be on here with you.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So, just a little bit about me. 23-year vet as a real estate agent. Long story short, I have really shifted my business since COVID, right? A lot of people during that period of time decided that they wanted to get away from the major cities, get away from, other people and kind of head out into the woods. And so we in the Shenandoah are about I'd say an hour and a half, 2 hours west of Washington, D.C., about 3 hours from Richmond, Virginia, and a little more than 3 hours from Baltimore, Maryland. So with our scenario, we are roughly what we call a regional market, similar to the Shenandoah to the Smoky Mountains, where their drivability is key and paramount to their success. We, as well as the Smokies, do have the Shenandoah National Forest. The Smokies has their national forest. That's the biggest driver to our area. It brings into the Shenandoah Valley at least 2 million visitors every year. We also have the Shenandoah River that a lot of people do enjoy, although the river has been low lately because of the lack of rain. But overall, this is what we find the most attractive about our two areas. So personally, we go after different types of properties, right? And so the first thing that we're talking to individual about is the actual unit itself, right? So in our market, we have, just in the 3 or 4 counties that I service, there's roughly 400 active listings. And I would basically say maybe 10 to 15% would be something that I would consider a very good opportunity for a short-term rental. After that, it's just a standard house. So I'm going to bring up specific strategy that I use. It's called the 4 Ps. The first one and most important is always the property, right? Vernon, I know you can say the same thing. So when you're seeking a first-time investor or seeking to helping an investor buy a short-term rental, what are the things that you look for first?
Well, if you're looking at a property, I think you're looking for amenities. I think you're looking at views. You're looking for the guest avatar that you're trying to service, and does that property meet those folks? I mean, that's not really property, but that's the kind of the approach we take. Is we always look to see if it's going to fit the needs of the guest avatar. We look at the property by looking at deferred maintenance, any kind of major things that are going to go wrong, like the roof or HVAC or any of your bigger charges.
Sure.
That's the first things we look at. But when we're
Yep.
looking for a property, we're looking at location, we're looking at amenities, we're looking at views, we're looking at just ease of access. Around us, it's similar to you guys probably too. Is we've got a lot of roads that are a little uncomfortable to drive on and things. So we really truly try to find the best way for folks to be able to get there. But from a property itself, I mean, amenities are everything. Making sure
Yeah.
that the guests have everything they need for a pleasant stay.
Yeah, that's key, right? So, that goes let's deep dive into that for a minute. So when you mentioned avatar, when I hear that word, I'm thinking couples retreats, I'm thinking family getaways, I'm thinking, bachelor parties, bachelorette parties, things like that. And what would really be the best scenario for this particular opportunity so that you can build your marketing plan around it? Because this property is not just an investment in real estate, it's an investment as a business, right? You have to be able to market your business to the right people to generate the right guests for that particular property. Something else to think about. You might have a buy box that says, I'm looking for $500,000 or $1 million property, right? Now, in that scenario, just that price point, 500 to a million, there are 1,000 different options, right? In the Smokies, we find that amenities like indoor swimming pools and more bedroom count, right? Two, three, four beds in the property make more sense, right? So you could find in our area something less expensive than that, but then you have to match up the beds and baths, right? So in our area, most of these properties, unless you're hiding out in a resort, where ski resort where we have two in our area, most of the time, I would tell you to buy anywhere from two beds to three beds. You know, you can get under 500,000 for two or three bed there. If you can get a four-bedroom property and get almost 8 to 10 guests in there, then you might be doing okay as well. So that also goes with square footage, right? So I'm not going to buy 1,000 square foot, three bed, two bath house and try to jam 10 people into that. It doesn't work, right? It's uncomfortable for the guests. They're sitting on top of one another. And, so you want to make it as livable as you possibly can and understanding that guest avatar very, very well before you even get started, right? And budget is a big part of that for sure. So now, when we say setup, right? So when I'm talking setup, I'm talking about lots of different things. So number of beds and baths, right? So if you have a three-bedroom house and you're trying to get 8 guests in there, would it be comfortable using just two bathrooms? Especially if only one of the bathrooms is in the hallway, the other one is in the master bedroom, and nobody's going to use that one unless you're in that master bedroom, right? So just trying to understand the guests livability, and then trying to set up that property in the best possible way. So, when we are deep diving into this is what we use towards separating just the general, Airbnb properties to the high performing STRs so that it's not just the views, it's not just the amenities, it's the comfortability, if that's a word, for the guest into that property, right? So furnishing the property and the priorities here. So Vernon, you're very good at getting these things set up and operating properly. So give me a little 2-second overview on each one of these little categories here.
Bedrooms, I think king size. I think if you're multi-generational, you need the bedroom to be on the main floor.
Sure.
Living room, I think you got to have plenty of seating space. Again, with the kitchen too, I think the living room needs to be comfortable, have a TV, and it needs to have plenty of seating for everyone. Same with the kitchen. I think you've got to have
Yeah.
all the utensils in the kitchen. I think you've got to have plenty of seating for everybody. So if you've got 8 people, you need to have 8 place settings, 8 chairs and everything. And then the outdoor areas, I feel like that you need a grill at minimum. Fire pit's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
I feel like accessibility to other things like the driveway and that sort of thing outside is a big deal because sometimes you have a place and you don't have enough parking. So
Yeah. Yep.
again, I think you're taking into consideration, as you said before, those counts. You're taking in consideration of potentially there could be multiple vehicles that arrive or whatever. So that outdoor area is just about as important as the inside. I think curb appeal is every too. They walk up to the
Yeah.
property. Is it inviting to people when they walk up to the property?
No doubt about it. Yeah, we see so many homes out there that are, you walk up and there's no landscape in the front yard. The grass is a little bit brown, right? Their first impression is not very good, and then they get into the house, and then it's like the Smokies. You get, oh wow, and then there's that view with the mountains and the clouds kind of floating by, right? So, it's how you set up your photography in there as well, right? So, when we're thinking about beds and baths, so comfortable sheets, comfortable mattresses, right? Some people will say hard mattresses. I don't know. If you go to a hotel, what do you normally find? It just depends, right? So living room, if you have an 8-person house, at least have eight seating spaces for somebody to watch TV, right? Kitchen, same thing. If you have a 6-person table, I understand. Maybe you have two at the bar, at the kitchen island or something like bar stool seating or something like that. Outdoor area, same thing. If you have an 8-person property, make sure you have enough space outside to sit around the fire pit for everybody, right? This is another one. So if you're thinking about amenities, right? We've got hot tubs. And so many times people they don't want to buy the hot tub because it's so expensive. Well, they buy a four-person hot tub instead of an eight-person hot tub, and now you're sitting in a position where not everybody can get in at the same time, right? So just little things like that. Um, we also talk about not overspending on anything, right? So excessive decor, luxury finishes that are barely noticed, and trendy furniture that can wear out pretty quickly. Now, that also goes to the type of property that you get. So a lot of the new cabins that we are seeing here, that very cool, modern, Scandinavian looking type A-frames, and in there, if you put in log furnishings, it's not going to match, right? But just make sure that you're thinking about the decor, keep it simple, keep it sexy, and make sure that it's something that can last a longer period of time, because a lot of properties, these things are not being, they may be used and then turned over relatively quickly, right? Anything else on that one particular that would hit you home, Vernon?
No, just really that trendy furniture can oftentimes be not durable furniture. A lot of times you
Yeah,
see
for
them,
sure.
they're not strong enough to support commercial, commercial application because residential application is way different. So I feel like that would be one area that I would look at too, because I see a lot of properties that are already set up from the builder or from the someone, and you go in and they've got little skinny legs on the beds, and the couches have like the little. And as soon as you sit, four or five people on a couch,
Boom.
they're going to be very uncomfortable. Just because it looks good doesn't mean it's comfortable.
Yeah, it's going to sit on the floor too. Right, there you go.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So we're talking about budgeting. Does anyone have any questions so far? Sounds like we're doing a good job. Cool. All right. So if I'm trying to get set up on a short-term rental, I'm going to, obviously have money set aside for my closing costs, maybe some updates and, some decor design, things like that. So I'm going to set aside a budget for all this thing. So it truly depends on the size of the house. So Vernon, on a typical four-bed property, how much do you think you should be spending as far as furniture if it's completely empty when you get there?
I think it's closer to 20, but that's just because of the type of clientele we deal with. If it's a local property, like more of a student housing or something, it could be on the lower side, but I would
Yeah.
have been playing on the high side of most of the numbers you've listed there,
Yeah.
because it just depends. I mean, if I wouldn't spend, on a $400,000 cabin, I wouldn't spend $20,000 on sure, but I would definitely consider it maybe, I would just look at it in relation to, what size property you have and what you're really looking to accomplish. I think where we get in the
Yeah.
weeds is when we try to add too much stuff. I mean, I'm always thinking minimalist. I'm thinking less is more, especially if it's
Yeah.
good, sturdy, comfortable stuff. People don't need you to have all the pretty pictures and everything. They need you to have a place for them to sit. So
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
I'm
And you,
spending
like
money.
I
I'm
said,
spending money there.
yeah, you don't want it to be uncomfortable either, right? Like
Right.
if you put two full couches in a property and it jams up the space and there's not enough walkability around that, then it's going to feel
Mhm.
uncomfortable too. So
Sure.
just keep in mind that you want to set it up like you would if it was your own home, not too overloaded, and spend money where you need to. So for example, on the furniture, the mattresses, the sheets and towels, those are things that I would spend a little bit more money on because those are the things that people would comment about, right? In their remarks or reviews, right? Decor and design. So you can do a ton with a couple grand, right? The more string lights, the more lighting you have in the property, that creates ambiance, that creates an elevated um, feeling to that property, right? So if you have undermount cabinet lighting, right, really cheap to install, something cool to have. If you have a game room, maybe some of that tape light that they put on there, right? That can change colors with a remote control and stuff like that. Outdoors, you got string lights that are around the fire pits, around the hot tubs, maybe even around the pickleball court or whatever the thing that is that's outside. String lights are good. The other things that you can consider that will bring some elevated feeling to the property is accent walls, right? So we're seeing a lot of different materials being used, right? So there are wood panels, there are shiplap, there is wallpaper murals, there is paintings, there are, just murals painted on the wall in each different facility. And that creates some kind of cool or wow factor that's going to generate that person to go, oh my God, this is the best place I've ever stayed. Right. And again, it needs to match the decor with the avatar that you're trying to accommodate. Right. Kitchen
Right.
supplies. You got to have enough plates, dishes, cups, glassware, all of that stuff to match the number of people. Right. Um, the outdoor amenities, so what is the most important one, right? It's the one that's going to generate you the most amount of money, right? So a lot of people ask me, is it necessary to have a hot tub? Vernon, I'll let you answer that question.
I think absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
pain, but I 100% agree. Most people, one of the first things people ask, does it have a hot tub? So
Yeah.
I think it's a must.
Yeah. Yeah. It is definitely a must. And it's one of those things where you can actually track your revenue, right? In our area, we even see some properties produce 20% more revenue just by having a hot tub. So if you're not into maintaining and cleaning that, make sure you have a hot tub anyway. It's
Right.
non-negotiable in my book. And
Uh-huh.
then you have your cleaner or you have some kind of services that take care of it for you. Right. Now, a lot of the properties that we have in our area are based off well. And, when you have a well, it's very hard to maintain that well and a hot tub if you're going to turn it over every single guest. So what we do is we have our cleaners go in, they clean out the filters. They make sure the water and pH is all set up properly. It's cleaned. It's nice and ready to go for the next guest. But then we have them actually turned over about once a quarter. We have a service that comes in, and the well water is not used to fill up that tub. In our area, there's different minerals and things like that that are in the water, in the well. That's not going to hurt you or anyone in particular, but it could be damaging to the hot tub. So we have people with water trucks that bring in pool water and stuff like that to help maintain them. It makes it a lot easier to refill and clean out more frequently. So um, here's the next one, Vernon's favorite topic, photography.
Mhm.
It's the second P on my list. So first one is
Yes.
property, the second is photography, right? So it says 300 to 800. That doesn't get it done in my book, right?
No.
That I think is very per picture. Right? You
Hmm.
need to be
Right.
spending upwards of almost 15 to $1,800. You might even want a photographer that's going to come out multiple times a year, and potentially even do action shots with live actors, right?
Hmm.
Have people in the hot tub, have people holding a glass of wine, whatever the feeling may be, because people are now seeking experience versus just the real estate itself. Vernon, what's your experience there?
I think $300 photos are nice, but they're for, again, a smaller apartment complex downtown. They're not for
Sure.
the luxury type cabins. And locally we've got guys anywhere between 750 and 1250. So that number definitely is I don't think a lot of times owners or folks realize how important that is to get the right photos in the beginning, because your five hero photos, as we know, that's the scroll stopper on Airbnb and Verbo. I mean, when you're
Right.
scrolling through there, those are your and those need to be right. Those need to look good, and they need to tell a story. And people need to be able to picture themselves there. And if it's
Yep.
just an angle picture from a corner of a room, you're not really telling that story. So anyway,
Yeah.
I think that budget there is a little low.
Yeah, for sure. So, for me, like I said, in this 4P strategy, the first is the property. So you're going to select the right one to match your avatar. The second is you're going to get high quality photographs that are going to match, right? Because this is online dating and it's not a set it and forget it scenario. This is one of those high contact sport games where people are going to swipe right or swipe left on your property based on the photography that you have there because they don't know anything about it, right? You have to capture their eye with a photography. Then they're going to dive into the listing and read the descriptions, understand the location, understand the amenities, and then decide to book your property if the price is right. So, photography is probably, in my book, the second most important, thing when you're buying an STR. All right, so now we're talking about ease and accessibility, right? So, smart home locks. This is super important. The lock needs to be combination, right? So if the guest arrives at 6 p.m. and it's in the pitch dark during the colder months, they can get it right into the property without having to have somebody there. Some of the properties I see out here have old school lock boxes where you turn the spindle and there's a code that comes into that, which that works, but also not something that can be changed as easily as you need it to be. So these smart home locks, you can change them to the person's phone number. You can change them each guest so that there is no threat of security after the fact. You know what I mean? So, Vernon, any particular brand that you like the best?
Not really. We've gone a lot with slaves, but that's not,
Yeah.
that's because it's easy, user friendly for us.
Yeah.
Uh, we have them in our phones and stuff, so we can actually change codes as needed on the properties that have them. That's one brand that seems to stand up pretty well for us.
Yeah, for sure. And then the other smart home stuff is just stuff that can be monitored, like you said, from your phone, like noise, noise decibel readers,
Mhm.
Nest thermostats, things like that that are controllable, so you can maintain that property while there's a guest there. And if there is a noise ordinance in a neighborhood and that's a big problem, then you want to be able to call the guest if they're having a party and say, "Hey, man, you got up to 8 decibels. We can't hear what you're saying, but it's too loud, and we need to, we've got some complaints. We need to turn that back because in our area, in certain places, there are permits that are hinging on maintaining this noise ordinance. So just be cautious of those things. So, but there anything that you can add to the property that is, remote ability, used from your phone or the internet would be really awesome to maintain. Now we're going to talk about cameras real quick. So you can't have a property with a camera inside, right? You can have a Nest one looking out at the front door. Where else can you have a camera on that property, Vernon?
You can really only have them in areas that are we only like to put them in areas of entry points, and we
Yeah,
never have them pointed at anything that's private, anything that's hot tub related or anything like that. So for
right.
us, you can never have any inside. And then with us, we try to be as very discreet with that as possible. We love to know when people are coming and going, somebody's having
Yep.
trouble with a lock or something, we can see it. Other than
Yeah.
that, to me, a camera is more about security and
Yep.
accessibility to the property for us than it is about spying on a guest. So
Yeah.
I'm not
100%.
all
Yeah.
about putting 13 or 14 cameras on a property. It's more about being
Right.
able to see somebody come and go, or at least if you see somebody having a trouble, you can literally talk to them on some of things, which is great. And
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So
we have the
at ours,
gadgetry there. A lot
yeah,
of
we have
times,
the
somebody,
the little
right,
Nest camera at the front door,
right.
which actually can see the driveway. So the cars that are pulling in, you can see them, and then
Mhm.
the people actually walk up, and that's it. Everything else is, you know, there's no camera, so it
Correct.
doesn't matter, right?
Right.
Cool. All right. So now we're into the fun stuff. Consumables. Do you offer, Keurigs, or do you put regular coffee pot? Do you offer, you know, candy bars and granola bars and hiking like little snack packs? What are the things that you put into that property that are going to make it different than everybody else? Do you put a welcome basket out, stuff like that? So Vernon, give us some help here. You're the master at the host game. So tell me what's your favorite strategy here?
Most of our properties, we have at least a small snack basket for them with a couple of granola bars. You try to stay away from allergy stuff, try to stay away from peanuts and things like that. But I mean,
Yeah.
simple things that are they're there. A couple bottles of water, just a few things, maybe a couple bags of chips or something. Ramen is a good thing to put there because sometimes people, if they've been traveling, they might come in and they're a little bit hungry. They can pour a little water in that, throw it in the microwave, and they can have a little snack as soon as they get there. Packs of crackers, things like that. We just consumable, you don't want to go overboard. But again, I think it depends on the level of get that you have staying there and the amount of money they're paying. I've
Yeah,
seen
for
people put
sure.
really extravagant baskets in properties, but again, if someone's paying $12,000 to stay for a week, you should give them some benefit for
A
that.
little
But
bit more. Right. Yeah,
if
for
something
sure.
else just basic, I just think you need to have some basics. I think water is always good. Like I
Yep.
said, just some little snacky things. And then again, try to stay away from anything that might be an allergy to somebody. And
Yeah. Or
we
or
don't recommend alcohol
alcohol.
unless you have a certified person who has vetted the guest or whatever. We don't do that unless we have people that do it. If somebody wants it, we have a concierge person that does it, and they do all the vetting, so it keeps us out of the liability.
Yeah, so that's cool. So that let me ask you about the concierge service. What is that? So For example, I'm traveling with my wife. It's our anniversary. I call you on the phone, Vernon. We're staying at your property for our anniversary. What can you do for me?
Yeah, so basically, we've done everything from balloons to roses on the bed to bottles of wine, champagne. Uh, Pretty much, if someone is having like a birthday party, we have a lady that comes out and does that. I think it's, you don't, it's not something you do for every guest, but there are special occasions. And it's normally
Sure.
when there's somebody like celebrating like a 25-year anniversary or something, that's something a little extra special. So our concierge folks basically they do it by by the product or by the job or whatever, and we sub that out locally, and they take care of it for us. And like sometimes, like I said, people want some roses or something like that, or maybe somebody wants a s'mores pack or something. We've got little opportunities like that for people, but it's a nice little upsell for folks to make a little extra money because you can actually mark it up a little bit and make a little
Yeah.
money if you do your own management and you can purchase the things. I mean, like I said, the s'mores kits are great, like extra teas and coffees and things that have a little bit extra, extra little flair to them. You can actually have an upsell there for folks. Uh,
Yeah,
we've
for
done
sure.
we've done
Yeah,
a little bit of all
some of
that.
that concierge stuff, you could have a masseuse, you could
Yes.
have a chef come in and cook a dinner, right? There are a lot of different opportunities there in our area because we do like water rafting tours, hiking trails and stuff like that. We can have discounts to different vendors that are out there. We also, in certain areas that are ski resort related, some of my hosts offer ski passes, right? So they can buy corporate passes and offer that to the guests so that when they're staying at that property, all the top performing units that are out there offer the ski passes for free. And that saves the guests a bunch of money, but it costs the host about $5,000 a month for 5 passes. So just can you make 15 to $20,000 extra if you offer a $5,000 type of scenario? So you just have to
Mhm.
weigh out that return on investment, right?
Mhm.
Start with the guest experience first. Phase in upgrades over time, right? Prioritize revenue driving amenities, right? So don't just add something for the sake of adding it. Um, in our area, we see a lot of people, throwing in these EV charging stations. That is a very big deal. In our area, there's very few charging stations and it's somewhat remote. So if you get a Tesla driving out from DC at a 2.5 hour window and they can only max out at 3 hours, they're kind of in a trouble spot unless you have an EV charging station. So just something to think about. Track those revenue driving amenities that will help improve your opportunity for that. Um, so highest return on investment. Every single one of them is something that we've already talked about, right? So sauna, cold plunge. That's cold plunge is a new tactic, right? So that's something that that hasn't we haven't really determined if that cold plunge is really going to drive more revenue, but some people are asking for it. Game rooms, outdoor seating, pet friendly. That's a huge deal. A lot of people come for the weekend. They don't want to have to board their pets over the weekend, right? Fire pits. That's almost a must. Some of these properties, they sit on a hill. They don't have the outdoor space for a fire pit. So what I recommend is somebody at least get a propane one that sits on the deck so that you can at least enjoy the outdoors, looking at the view, understanding that you're going to have a little bit of warmth from that gas grill, or gas fire pit. Absolutely have to have a hot tub. Game rooms, anytime you see a garage that's not being used or something like that, that's the space where I'm trying to put, game room. Um, because the garage itself, most guests are just going to park on the outside unless it's a snowy area and they want to park in the garage. That garage is better used for something else. So you want to maximize that square footage the best you can. Anything you see on this list that's different than what should be there, Vernon?
No, I think it's a very thorough list. I like that list, and I think the workspace is a biggie. No one likes to work when they travel, but it's nice to have a place with high speed internet,
Yeah,
so you can sit down and actually do work if you need to. To
right.
me, that's
Yep. And then people ask me all the time about their TV, right? And so do I need to get cable or do I need to have all of the stations or whatever? I said, absolutely not. Most people are going to come and travel. They're going to stay a couple of days. They're going to be doing the outdoor activities mostly, especially in our areas, right? They're going to go hiking for the day. In the evening, they may watch TV, but then they could just log into the Roku, you know, log into their Netflix or Paramount Plus and, Disney Plus channels and go for it. You know what I mean? But at least have an
Mhm.
internet-based TV, right? Um, so the fully stocked kitchen, we talked about the coffee bar, we talked about parking is a huge, huge deal. And, whether it's more important or not, but very basic, clear instructions as to how to get to the property, parking, and how to enter that property. And then very clear when they get there how to log into the Wi-Fi, right? Some properties have little QR codes that are plastered all over the house that would lead them to a guest book, that could lead them to amenities outside the property, that could lead them to things to do in the area. It could be a lot of different opportunities for you, but very specific and clear, like a baby reading that instruction panel to them is very, very important. So there's no question as to what's going on. I stayed at one property in Asheville, North Carolina. It was actually just north of Asheville. And it was a 20-minute ride down a dirt road. Now, this was the experience I was going for. But the guy who owned the property said, if you're deciding to come to my property, at least come during the day to check in and then get your bearings as to where this property is because the roads are skinny, it's very dark, and there is nobody around. And
Huh.
so, you know, he was very clear about that instruction. So, as it got later in the day after we would go out and have happy hour or whatever, we would make sure that we were back in time, that it was still a little bit light, so that we weren't, you know, getting lost or stuck in the woods, if you know what I'm saying. So, all
Mhm.
right, cool. Getting that first booking. So obviously photography is very important. Vernon helped me with this marketing strategy. So we talking about optimized headlines, strong hero photos, optimi or automated messaging. Tell me all about what you're doing to get this property set up the right way to begin with.
Well, we have a product called STR Ready that we do for our onboarding, and it
Okay.
actually helps us create that new. This is a product me and a friend designed. It actually helps us build that property out correctly, and it puts everything in it. And what happens with that is we want to make sure that we have all the information we can have for the guest experience. Because if I don't know where the the panel is for the electrical panel, the guest is not going to know, and I don't know, then I look silly. We go
Right.
the extra step. What it does is when we build that out, it actually builds out some AI, and it actually helps with them when they're there. It saves us a lot of information back and forth, and a lot of conversations. A lot of my guests, once they settle in, because we give them so much info up front, we don't really hear from them unless they're just pain in the rear end, or we just, they just want to talk. But ultimately, we want our guests to know as much as they can about the property so they can enjoy their vacation and not have to chat with us. I mean,
Yeah.
some people are all like, oh, well, I want to chat with you the whole time. And there's people that just want to be left alone. So we find that the more you do that and the more you give them information and the automated messages, I can tell you, I have a different opinion about automated messages. They're great, but you need to be able to turn them on and off, because I've had a lady the
Yeah.
other day, she called me just cussing, and she was mad. She went to the wrong property. There was a lot of things that went wrong, and she was upset. And she got there, and there was some things that were not she wasn't happy with. It's one of my buddies I was helping for the weekend, and of course that's the one that I got I got the
Yeah, that's
calls
the
about.
one. It always
And
is the one.
what happened was is his automations just kept kicking over, and this lady had been on the phone with me basically just frantic about just having a terrible stay. And then the next thing she gets pop up is like, "Hey, we want you to have a 5-star experience." And it's like she was on pins and needles and edge, but that automated messaging. So I think sometimes we need to remember the human element to this is super, super important to people. And so
Yeah,
that would be one
I
thing I would
agree with
stay
you on
there.
that. I mean,
But
there
when
are
you're
certain
doing your
things that can be automated for sure, but overall, you have to be able to understand the scenario and answer the question in the right particular
So
manner,
with our
right?
launch strategy, we try to outthink the guest. That's the simplest thing I can put it. Anything that the guest could have a bad experience with, we want to outthink them. And we've got really good property notes for that. So
For
that to
sure.
me is super, super important. That has as much about the property as they do, if not more. You know more about the area than they do. And then with our strategy, we're always looking for the local mom and pops, the eat, stay, play thing. We're always looking for the people around it that we can refer them to hey, here's the best cup of coffee. Hey, here's the nice little breakfast nook over here that's kind of out of the way.
Yep.
That's to me, that's part of your launch strategy just as much as all these other amenity things that we're talking about here.
100%. Yeah. And so, a lot of times when people are asking for, the revenue numbers or the projections, and then, the P&L, right, for currently, for sale property, that may or may not include some of the other tools that you use, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that little program that you have, that's not free, right?
No.
That has some money attached to that.
Mm-hmm.
Setting up the Airbnb and VRBO accounts, and actually understanding what type of guests use those two different platforms, right?
Right.
On top of booking.com and other things, right? So what is your strategy when it comes to that, right? Having that right person in your corner that's going to help you understand that, because each platform has their own fees, each platform has their own type of guest, and then each month actually changes. I had somebody the other day just ask me, on a property that I have listed, well, what's the breakdown between Airbnb and VRBO? And I said, well, I have my gross revenue numbers. I don't specifically have them broken down into, nightly rates on who booked what, but I can tell you the different types of people, and where they come from during certain particular stays, and how the length of stays, the types of guests, and different, avatars that use either of those platforms. Right. I also know that Airbnb is much more friendly, if you call it that, as far as, they've got a problem with the property and Airbnb gets involved, right? Their help desk is a lot better than booking.com's, right? But booking.com is going to generate a lot of opportunity because the lower rates and things like that people are going to, want to be at. So, just kind of understanding all of that, right? Then you have other tools like property management software. You have Guesty, you have Hospitable, you have Lodgify. There's tons of, Owner Res. There's different types of programs out there that can connect all of the calendars together into one spot, so that if it's booked on Airbnb, then it's taken off of booking.com and VRBO. But you actually have to manage that, because sometimes those programs fail and they don't connect correctly. And then you might have a double booking. That could be a problem. Then there's the dynamic pricing tools, invaluable tool. You have to have it, right? You're going to use that to match up with what other, properties around you, what your competition is doing, and then raise or lower your rates automatically depending on the scenario for that. um, Nightly stays, right? So in during the weekends we have a 2 night minimum. Vernon, what's your scenario with your minimum stays?
We like 2 nights
Yep.
mostly because in our market, that's kind of people's, of course, holidays, special events. And around here, we have a lot of UT football games, usually Tennessee. We try to do
Yep.
3 nights on those. But if nothing else, we're trying to get the most return on our investment for those days. If we don't go 3 nights, we at least try to get the 2 nights at the top of the budget, the top of the revenue as we can.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's also property specific, right? So I have
yeah.
a 2 bed, 1 bath, 1,000 square foot A-frame here in the Shenandoah. And we absolutely have a minimum of 2 night stays for our weekends. But our Monday, Tuesdays are, 1 night stays. And the discounted rate just to get that night filled up is about 10% less than the norm. So, we do that specifically so that we can keep that property, you know, in use versus, having a vacant night, because we want the most amount of revenue that we can possibly get. Now, I also understand you also have to have some breathing room. You want to have some time to make sure that your property is being taken care of. Have, vendors go in to make sure the light bulbs are there, the batteries are changed, and all the smoke detectors and remote controls and stuff like that. So, just those things. All right, so now we're into, the poor stuff, right? So don't do these things. Don't have too high of pricing. Just don't, right? Don't have cell phone pictures. Don't not put in amenities because you can't afford it. Like, if you're not able to do that right away, understood. But, make sure you have it in the budget that you're going to add a hot tub, or it's at least have some kind of amenity there, right? Generic descriptions, right? With the use of AI right now, you can drop a description into ChatGPT. Within 30 seconds, they can fluff that thing right up and make you a lot better than just, having your own one sentence scenario. Hey, really great property in the Smokies. visit us today.
Right.
Right? That I've seen. I've seen it, right? Like waterfront property, Tampa Bay. Okay. Wow. That's amazing. Anyway. All right. Now we're into the really cool stuff, the marketing pieces and all of the things that really go down to it. So, when we are looking and helping you find a property, we are seeking out the top 10% first and foremost. We are analyzing the property once you select two or three of them. And then once we are there, we're helping you with setup. But we have people in our quiver that can help you with that setup. And so we are a one-stop shop. Vernon is doing the same thing. Vernon is a very good property manager. He's also a very good realtor, and he knows how to set these things up. So he's doing a lot of the same things that we are doing up here. So we are, if you're looking for a realtor in a specific area, make sure that they are STR friendly. They understand the game, right? Any realtor can help you buy and sell property. That's okay. But at the end of the day, we are much better at finding that property that's going to do better. We're much better at finding the properties that are going to profit more, right? Doing that property analysis is huge. We have a list of vendors. Hot tub people seem to be the one that everybody wants to talk to, right? And we have STR launch strategies, right? So we know where to go, how to do it, and marketing plans behind it. What platforms do you need to be on? All of that stuff that's really going to help that property launch to the fullest capacity that it can be, right? So here we are. We've got about 15, 20 minutes late or left. Anybody got any questions? It's very quiet in the room. I hear the crickets. Vernon, all right. So if you were a brand new STR investor, what's the first thing that you're looking for?
Um, Normally, it's most people want to be able to pay the mortgage, but that's the first
Great
thing,
answer.
most and
Great
foremost.
answer. Like,
Yeah,
can I
sure.
survive this
Can I
this
take
particular
care of
thing? Sure.
take care of them? And so I think as most of my investors come to me, I'll tell them that you're that's a great question, but there's a lot more to it. That's the very first thing I think of when most investors I talk to, they could pay their bills.
Yeah, I mean, when you're answering that question, what other things that come to my mind is, all right, so I hear all the time there's a bunch of different coaching programs out there. There's YouTube, there's all these different things that you can subscribe to, right? And they all say that STRs are the best investment and you can make the most money. That's true in most cases, right? But at the same time, that's not just an easy statement to make. You have to put in the work to do the thing that you're supposed to do. So when somebody is doing analysis on a property, I'm going to ask them what are the specifics that I can tell you about the house, the very
Mhm.
true facts, right? I know what the mortgage payment's going to be based on the price. I know what the insurance, right? I can get a good faith estimate from any lender that can tell me what the cost of the property is going to be on a monthly basis. Then I can go out to the owner of that home and find out what the electric bills that they've been paying. Then I can find out what the internet costs have been. If there's a water or sewer or if there's a well and septic, we can figure those costs out, right? Then we can budget in there different aspects of the supplies, right, depending on what you're trying to accommodate, right? How many beds and baths, how many cups of coffee, how many rolls of toilet paper, all of that stuff, right? We can budget that in there, base it on a 50% occupied. I can even tell you in our area the cleaning rate, depending on the house, right, is, let's just call it a two bed two bath, right? It's probably $250, right? And if you're going to be at 50% occupied, you're going to have just your weekends filled up. So there's 4 or 5 turns times $250. There's your expenses, right? Can you survive in this market with your expenses at 50% occupied, right? That's straight up, no fluff, no profit. That's what I'm going to make, right? So if I can hit that number, I'm going to cover my cost. I'm good. Now, if I can get 2 or 3 additional nights on top of that, I can build my occupancy up to 75%. Or I can save myself some money by turning things off and, different things with the electric bill. Obviously, my mortgage is going to be pretty static, right? So what are the things that I can do that can help me understand what my costs are going to be for this particular property, right? So I just like to know what are my exact costs if it's at 50% occupied? Can I cover my expenses at 50%? Simple as that, right? In my area, people ask me for 15 to 20% cash on cash return. What does that mean? If I buy a $400,000 house, they want it to produce at least 80 grand a year. Then I also know that my expenses run about 40 to 50% of my gross revenue. So I know at that particular moment what my take home or profit should be, right? In the Smokies, that number is a little bit different. What is the general profit cash on an annual basis, Vernon?
Yeah, we're trying to get on the properties in our market. We're looking at normally based on the mortgage payment, we're looking at about 15 to 20% of that is what we're looking for to gross. So
Yeah.
300,000, we're looking at 15 to 20,000 is what we're looking
So if you
for.
have $1 million property, you want 150 grand.
150 minimum.
Yeah. If it doesn't hit that number, then what can we do to make it hit that number? Right? Or it's not a good investment at this point. Right? Now, Vernon, tell me what's going on in your market. Is there a lot of listings out there?
Yeah, quite a bit. We've seen the same thing that a lot of markets are seeing. We're seeing the post-COVID thing happening now with people that overbought during the 2020, 21, 22, 23. And what's happening is our market is we like to say our market is maturing. It's not actually saturated. A lot
Yeah.
of people spot energy on that phrase, and what they don't understand is you know some properties are just not going to make a certain amount of money. A while ago, I like the fact that you used the 50% number, because right now our average occupancy is between 55 and 67%. And a lot of people were used to getting the 90 plus or 85 plus, and that's a
Right?
big dip. And then, of course, Airbnb came out now and started, if you're connected to a PMS, you've got another 15% you've got to account for, roughly. We say about
Sure.
18, the number we use. But,
Yep.
it's the market right now. People are buying properties at, $450,000. They may be seeing a return 40 to 45,000 a year on gross, and after they pay all their bills, it's a very
Tight window. Yeah.
market right now, and it's a tight window. But I see people on the other side of just killing it, blowing it out of water. So our market really is kind of lending itself more to the operator mentality now. People that go into it with the idea of, okay, yes, this is a handoff investment, but I really need to do my due diligence. I need to spend time and energy making sure that the numbers work for me, making sure that if I buy a property that I can afford to pay it when there's lean times. We're like a lot of
Yeah.
markets. We have seasonal times, January, February, September
March.
is
Yeah.
traditionally a year, slow month, and then March can be a little slow. So really, the bulk of a lot of our business, is really between May and July, and then we get another kick. I'm probably like you guys, we get another boost because of the fall colors, and then
Right.
traditionally, the holiday season's okay, but if you're not capitalizing during those times, it's very hard to make any money in our market.
Yeah, and you're a seasoned operator, right? And this
Yeah.
is the most important statement that he and I are both going to make. A general real estate agent can help you buy that property, but a seasoned STR investor friendly agent is going to help you make money in that property. And there is a big difference, right? There is a huge difference. And so knowing these trends, knowing how to calculate the numbers, knowing what guests are looking for, not the everyday agent knows that stuff, right? And so there is a big difference in that. And then you add to it the other side of it. The legal, the LLCs, the
Mm-hmm.
marketing, the Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff, right? Then you're adding to it even further the tax benefits, right? Having those people, a lot of Vernon, I don't know if this is something that you're seeing too, but almost every one of my new buyers right now are looking to shelter their taxable income.
Mm-hmm. Correct. A lot more
Every
people are
single one
doing
of
that.
them.
Right.
Every single one of them. And it's not just the $1 million houses, although my price points this year have jumped from 500,000 to 8 or 900,000.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the reason for that is because in our area, we have a lot of high income earners, doctors, lawyers, CEOs, people that are looking to use that 100% bonus depreciation and a cost segregation to manage their income, right? And that's part of this strategy as well, right? So not only is cash on cash and return important, profitability is important, but that taxability, because that is a huge, huge piece that people, you know, if you have to spend the money to make the money, right? This is where it's going, right? So just understanding and having that agent that's going to be STR friendly in that particular market that you're looking for. So I'm going to throw one out there. This is a softball. Vernon, if you were to buy an STR today, where are you going to buy an STR?
Of course, in my market, of course, or
Yeah.
Shenandoah Valley. Those are the two. Obviously, you have a really good market, but yeah, in my area here, um, we've seen that something as simple as being 15 miles instead of 10 miles from a major attraction can
Yeah.
really can really affect it. So if I'm buying in the Smokies, I'm buying somewhere close to Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg, right in the within
Right in the heart.
within
Yeah,
yeah,
baby.
the heart somewhere with great views and that sort of thing. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm buying in those two markets for sure. Sevier County, on the other hand, there's a bigger Sevier County. We've got a large county, but
Yep.
really close to an attraction, close to, and that's super important to people. To me, that's the key to the whole thing is being close to where everybody will stay.
Yeah. And what everybody doesn't know, and this is important. I learned this from a friend of ours. His name's Travis Dupree. He's on your team.
Mm-hmm.
When I was there visiting the Smokies, this is a couple years ago. We were touring some properties, and from Knoxville to Gatlinburg was 30, 45 minute drive, right? But
Mm-hmm.
touring between properties took a long time because these roads are not easily navigable,
Right.
right? And so understanding what he just said, 10 to 15 miles, 15 miles is far, even though it doesn't seem like it. You know what I mean? And understanding that piece is a huge, huge deal. All
Mm-hmm.
right, so let's throw this. I'm gonna just throw. So I look at all different types of markets out there. I am looking to retire. I don't want to retire yet. I'm going to retire in 15 years. I want to buy a property in the place that I'm going to live, right? So I'm looking at places like North Carolina. I'm looking at Tennessee. I'm looking at South Carolina, right? Different markets. And understanding that you have to do the same due diligence in those areas if you're trying to do that strategy. So for what I'm looking for is a house that I would live in my retirement years that I can buy today and STR until I need to move, and then I'm selling my primary residence, moving into that particular investment property, and then it would be paid for hopefully by that point, or at least significantly reduced. So I'm looking at lakes, I'm looking at mountains, maybe beach markets, right? I've lived in the mountains my
Mm-hmm.
entire life. I love the mountains. I think the mountains are much better and easier to manage than beach properties. Clientele is certainly different, and then there's less threat of hurricanes and all that unless you're in Asheville, right?
Mm-hmm.
That whole area got crushed a couple years ago. So just understanding, what is the investment strategy on top of just making money, right? And so for me, I like the East Coast, although I hear a lot of great things about, Joshua Tree, California. I hear a lot of great things about the Gulf Coast of Alabama. Um, certain places in Florida are doing very well, although insurance costs are extremely high. I hear that Myrtle Beach can be great depending on what you're actually going after. Don't, the condo tells their management fees are 40 to 50%. So
Mm-hmm.
probably not a place that I'd want to be unless it's something that I'm using once a month. You know what I mean? So at least I can cover my mortgage. I'm happy to have that type of thing. So just thinking about, what's the next strategy? If I'm the STR person, where am I buying? That's how I think about it when I get a new buyer or seller to come to me and talk to me about it. So what's the next thing? What's the strategy so that I can help, fine tune this discussion into the same buy box that you're looking for. So anyway, well, that's it that I have for today. If there's any other questions, feel free to message us. We are going to send this recording out. Vernon, thank you as always for your time. I
Thank
appreciate
you, bud.
you. You guys are rocking down there. I'm really excited to be in business with you guys. So stay out of trouble, mister.
Thank you.
All
See ya.
righty. Have a good day, everybody. Thank you again.